Greetings and welcome to You Talk, yet another episode where I'm sure we will absolutely keep it to our 14-minute time limit, as always, because we are very professional and totally keep it to that limit every single time. So today, what are we talking about again? Right.
So you
Why
wanted
do we
to,
hear? Hmm?
you actually wanted to briefly talk about the nature of bilateral treaties, why we go to
Yes.
war on behalf of other nations.
Yes.
But we
Yes.
also wanted to talk about provocations because you keep seeing press releases talking about, oh, we cannot allow these provocations to stand.
Mm.
And it's all a
Effectively, the
very
media is
nice
going
way.
nuts. Effectively, the media is going nuts in saying that, it's like, and this isn't just in Australia, this is in
No,
Australia, China, the US. The media is going nuts saying, essentially, China's apparently provoking the US and Australia to war. Australia and the US are apparently provoking China to war. And in Australia, at least, we've been given the impression by the media, and I think this is grossly, what's the word, irresponsible of the media to do so. But we've been given the impression that war with China is inevitable.
mm,
Any Tom, Dick, and Harry general out there, whether or not he's, actually knows what he's talking about or not, is being quoted as this idea that we will, and that we absolutely will have to go to war with China is just a fact of life. So we
okay,
need to
okay.
we need to
Let's not
discuss.
malign the good names of Tom, Dick, and Harry here, hey? I'm sure Tom, Dick, and Harry are very hard workers who slavishly shovel at the nonsense factory all day.
Yes, yes, they do very hard work making up bullshit propaganda. So let's instead just talk about two things. The main topic being, why are we hearing all these provocations about war between China and Australia, China and the US, and all that? And just as a bit of context for Australia in all of this, why does Australia go to war effectively on behalf of other nations?
Yeah,
And this I actually know a fair bit about, and it's because of essentially treaties like the ANZUS Treaty, but the reasons for those treaties is the real reason why we go to war for others. Going all the way back to when we were effectively a British colony or still part of the British Empire, we went to
hmm
war on behalf of Britain when we were called, not because of some great love for the mother country. I mean, sure, there was some of that there as well, but that wasn't the reason for the decision. The reason why we went to war when called was very purely out of practicality. It was
we
very much,
knew that
yeah,
if we honored our word, that we would similarly be protected should we require it. The
yes,
entire point of bilateral treaty is that we trade our convenience for knowing that someone else will have our backs in the way that we have had theirs.
yes, but have our backs as to what? See, the thing is, what we need most of all are for shipping lanes to be guaranteed, because
Mm-hmm.
we export a lot of food, a lot of raw materials. That's essentially what Australia's economy originally was built off of. Now it's a lot more about services, but we still have, as a decent portion of the economy, exports in food and raw materials, and so we need shipping lanes to be secure. We need to know that if we send a ship out there, it's not going to get hit by pirates, or another nation isn't going to just take the ship or close down the shipping lane for whatever reason. And so we need essentially a kind of, I was going to say benefactor, but it's more of like a security guarantor. And at first, that was the British Empire. They would guarantee that the shipping lanes would always remain open, and that we could trade with the world, and thus we'd have economic security. And in World War II, that almost by default got changed to the US. And so the US took over security of shipping lanes, which we very much needed. And in exchange, well, we join them in every war that they go to. You know, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, everywhere else. You know, it doesn't matter because we trade going to war for security in shipping lanes, and that is the point of that.
The problem, of course, is that when you have a security guarantor in this way, you have to continually make a value judgment. Are the wars they're getting into worth it? When you have this guarantee of security, you have to ask, is there a way to do this without getting drawn into quite so many conflicts? But because, in part, the US has attempted to set themselves up as the world's police, the world's arbiter of right and wrong, and this is why we're seeing some smaller alliances popping up at the moment to challenge that. Your choices are, in many respects, to throw your towel in with the Yanks, or be alone when the barbarians are at the gates.
Or on the opposite side of things, a pariah state, like Russia now, although, that they kind of deserve that. Well, I wouldn't say Russia itself deserves that, but that's, more Putin's actions than them.
Russia's leadership has made choices that will make Russia's standing in the world difficult to reclaim. That is how we phrase this. Yeah. And now, speaking of things that Russia has done, do we want to talk about those provocations briefly?
Wait, with Russia? Or
No.
Yeah. A little confusing there, but yeah, so
like this segue to our sponsor. Just kidding. We don't have sponsors. Do we look rich enough to have sponsors?
I don't know. We're both wearing, suit jackets, although mine's a bit small for me.
Same. Nice, I've gotten a little bit chunky. The term provocation is very interesting because it says absolutely nothing. Like, if I were to walk past a random civilian in Paris and steal their jambon beurre from the table and eat it, that is certainly a provocation, but it is not one which would result in the threat of warfare between France and Australia. I'm not even sure what that would result in, to be honest. But it wouldn't result in the threat of warfare, of that I am certain. When we hear provocations being spoken about, usually we're hearing it in the context of press releases, things like, oh, this provocation cannot go unanswered. We will not tolerate these provocations.
What provocations are we talking about, though?
Well, in one of the more recent cases, relations between the Communist Party of China, Chinese Communist Party, and the government of Australia were strained due to increased tariffs on an export. I don't remember the specifics of this, but the long story short is an economic sanction was imposed. The Chinese government did not like that, and so they said, "Oh no, we don't want to be disrespected like this." And so they threatened to raise taxes on things we wanted to import.
There was okay. I thought you were talking about when the COVID situation, the proposed investigation. Okay,
no. I was talking about the Strictly Commercial Act. Now, in this case, leveraging a tariff on a class of product that one country is buying the vast majority of can be seen as an unfriendly act, or certainly an attempt to extort. And in this case, you say something in a press release, you say, oh no, we cannot tolerate this provocation. and that doesn't actually mean anything. The decision's already been taken to retaliate by making us pay for something. But what you say when you say we're not tolerating this provocation is
Very open to interpretation.
on the contrary, I think that it's not open to interpretation at all. I think that it is a universal and unambiguous statement. Fuck around, find out. The decisions about how to deal with the problem have already been made in closed rooms between government ministers. But what you have to present to the outside world and to your own people is a picture of strength. You have to say, we are your government. We will not allow you to be taken advantage of. You have to say, we are your government. We will not let you be disrespected. Sometimes you have to say, we are your government, and we will do everything that we can to make sure the nukes don't fall. And so this idea of a provocation is a very useful catch-all for a government has done something that we regard to be unfriendly to us, and we have to respond in kind in order to either convince them to reverse that course or to negotiate something that we think is fairer.
But
And
doesn't that make it, because it's a catch-all, doesn't that make it more open to interpretation?
honestly, no. Once we accept that it is a catch-all term, once we accept that this idea of a provocation is just a convenient shorthand for saying, trust us, we're going to do what is best for you. Like, what we're looking at is almost the language of propaganda. The reason that there's been an uptick in people saying, oh, but it's provocations, is because the geopolitical situation worldwide has become more complex in the last 10 years. And with increasing complexity, there are going to be missteps.
But does it need to be more complex? I mean, part of all of this, like all of this just seems like a song and all of this seems like a big song and dance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like it basically, it's everyone putting up a front when the issues are actually a lot more simple.
Do you remember Tony Abbott saying he was going to shirt front Putin?
Yes.
Now, I've seen bloody Putin. Do you know how that ends? That ends with volunteer firefighter Tony Abbott on the floor with his ass kicked by former FSB agent Vladimir Putin.
Okay.
Like, the shirt fronting was not a real threat.
See,
it was a metaphor.
Mean by that? What did he even, like, what did he actually mean by shirt front?
He meant to grab someone by the shirt and lift them up. Like, it's a reference to an act of aggression.
Imagine if he'd actually done that.
Oh yeah, the footage would have been great.
Oh yeah, that would have.
In this context, Abbott had no intention of starting a physical confrontation with Vladimir Putin.
Oh, of course not.
He was instead talking about defending the dignity of Australia, of not being seen to be weak.
Well, and then he treated, Putin to a photo up with some koala bears. That was literally what happened. It's all right. He killed him with kindness. Killed him with kindness.
No, that's the thing, though. That played out pretty much textbook. He said what he needed to say to be seen to be tough. And then he undertook a diplomatic effort to repair a relationship in the hopes of negotiating a relationship that could be favorable.
We need to hold up right there, because that's something that I want to hone in on.
Mm-hmm.
He did what he needed to look a certain way. Yep. Why are we always so concerned with looks and rather not substance? And this isn't just a problem with international diplomacy, politics. This is a problem with society. We're also concerned about how we look and less concerned about the substance behind it.
Yeah, this is a very good way to cut through the entirety of this. When we talk about a provocation, we're not actually usually really talking about anything. When we talk about a provocation, We're talking about how we are perceived.
I was literally about to say the same thing. I was just like, we're just talking about how others view us. Just talking about
Yes.
how others, basically how others have interpreted, or how we're interpreting others. It's essentially, how are you taking this?
Yeah. And you
Which
asked
is,
earlier, why couldn't this be less complicated? And that does tie into why is it about how we're seen and not about our substance?
mm,
We live in a world where insulting the leader of a foreign power is a few keystrokes away. There is no delay. We do not wait for the postal service. We cannot intercept something at the airport that was written while the foreign minister was drunk. Everything
in
happens immediately, so fast, continually. And there are cultural differences which sometimes fail to be taken into account between different nations. Uh, if you dropped the C bomb in a part of the US,
it used to be
someone wouldn't
illegal there.
know.
It used to be illegal in many states. In fact, I actually know this because a comedian, Jim Jeffries,
Mm-hmm.
he went over there, and in a state where it was illegal, he used the word
Oh no.
in that many times in a comedy performance, that they ended up legalizing it retroactively to make his entire performance legal because it was hilarious. So they allowed the word
Whereas
through cultural exchange.
if you say this in Glasgow, in Scotland,
You're
it's
referring to a friend, much like in
you
Australia.
might be referring to a friend or you might be referring to your boss. There are
All
cultural
right, the
differences,
cunt.
and when we live in a world that is so interconnected, um, it is very
Be
easy
aware,
for
we've run
cultural
way over time.
differences.
We've
Okay,
run way over time. We're almost at the 18-minute mark.
I'll make this quick. Because of cultural differences, we can't just expect everything to be taken in good faith, because we can't expect to be seen to be acting in good faith without a filter between what we mean and how we represent ourselves. Contract law is a very good tool here because we have consideration, we have clear definitions, we have our expectations nicely laid out, and we have remedies if we screw it up. And a treaty is just a contract. A treaty is just a contract between two governments. But this is why diplomacy is so hard. There's a tale of President Reagan, I think, addressing a Japanese audience, and the translator has translated a joke that he was slightly unconfident about. And the joke's gone over well, and he's just like, okay. And after he's asked what the translator has said, and the translator has said, oh, I told them the president has made a funny joke. You should laugh now. It could be so much simpler. It really could. But for the fact that all humans are informed by differing cultural contexts, what may be seen as respectful in one culture may be seen as a deathly insult in another. And that's fine when the result is fisticuffs. But when we have weapons that are capable of leveling cities, it's very important that we mind our manners, and it's very important that we have a network of alliances so that if we fail to mind our manners, we can buy time to repair the relationship by the threat of not wanting to start something bigger.
Interesting points. Interesting. And
This
with
is
that,
all a provocation is. It is a we strongly invite you to walk back your unfriendly action.
Interesting. Now that is food for thought. And we'll leave it there because we're way over time. We're probably at the 20-minute mark by now. So
I am
catch
very
us later.
sorry, everyone, but I'm really passionate about not being dead.
And with that, we'll end. Take care.
Good night.